Hey everybody, hey, happy Friday! Woo, Friday! Happy Friday. All of you directors and executive leaders in the public works sector all across North America from Fredericton, New Brunswick. What's happening in Fredericton? Fredericton. Anaheim, California. Lenexa, Kansas. Frisco, Colorado. Baytown, Texas. Come on, Texas. I love Texas. I do love Texas. I was just in Texas. I was in Grand Prairie, Texas. Grand Prairie, Texas. I've been to Grand Prairie, Alberta many, many times, but that was the first time I've been to Grand Prairie, Texas. How's the Texas theme song go? The eyes of Texas are upon. No, that's not it. The eyes bring by and day and night, deep in the heart of Texas. Hey, if I seem a little punchy, perhaps even drunk, it's because I just got in on a plane at 1:30 in the morning because I was in Minnesota at the APWA Minnesota Chapter Fall Conference. Is the big one. Is their big fall conference. They got 1,000 members. 1,000 members at old APWA Minnesota. And it was cold. It's cold. Yep. It's cold, but we had a good old time and all of the good people there, and we had fun. And I was literally there I literally flew in from Calgary and was there literally like an hour. Spoke for an hour, got on a plane, flew back here because I had to be with you. I had to be with you. I had to hang out with you. It's 10:30 on the East Coast, 11:30 Atlantic time. It's 12 o'clock in Newfoundland. But way out here, it's 7:30 in the morning, which means I had to be in the studio at 4 a.m. Because all of this takes like 3 hours. I don't do crap. I just sit down and talk. Hey, listen. All right, we got to get rolling. Enough of that nonsense. Second, that was first. Second, big shout out to all of the people in Buffalo, sending good wishes and our thoughts and prayers that all of our public works professionals in the Buffalo region and across the lake in places like Whitby and Oshawa and Toronto, but mostly Whitby, Oshawa, Pickering, Ajax, places like that. We just wish that you're safe as you're out there doing your work quietly and professionally and making great things happen for your citizens. We were talking about that in Minnesota. You know, everybody was talking about the first responders being able, getting to people's homes and rescuing and all that kind of stuff. And, as one of the guys at the conference said, they wouldn't have been able to get there if there wasn't some guy on a plow. Right? All right, what are we talking about? Well, we're moving on to the next competency. So the first 3 weeks is over now, and we ask you to look introspectively within yourself. We gave you a number of different exercises, right? First, we talked about that change continuum, and then we did that leadership history survey. Did you call your best boss? Did you connect with them? Did you take some time to talk to them? You are used to be so fast. We're working on Jeff's speed. Have you made that phone call to the person who made a significant difference in your life? Did you reach out to them and thank them for the difference that they made? And did you remember that you could be that difference in somebody else's life? Whatever it is, question number 9 or question number 10. You can be question number 9 in somebody's life, or you could be question number 10 with somebody's worst boss. And in this past week, we talked about the leadership style inventory, or understanding your leadership style. And you were supposed to take that exercise and then talk to others about what their style was and what your style was. Because this whole thing is about alignment, right? We talked about that. How do we get the department in alignment? So there's where am I at? There is the stated mission of the department. And oftentimes we got this going on. right? Not to say these people aren't doing a good job, but are they in alignment? So we wanted to get that going on, right? We wanted to get that going on, where everybody knows the goal, everybody knows their role, everybody knows what winning looks like. How do we get that going on? And the only way to get that going on, in my opinion, is to draw people closer together, marshal them towards a common goal. Well, that understanding your leadership exercise was a tool to begin dialogue. Today, we're going to talk about what to do with that dialogue, because it's all about trust. It's all about trust, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. But if I'm going to get this arrow going that way, then something's got to change. And the first step in change is understanding. And remember, we talked about if an individual understands or feels like you understand them and they understand you, there's a greater opportunity for alignment. So that exercise was an exercise to help start the process of gaining greater alignment. And this next 3 weeks, we'll talk about the actual of how to do that. Agent of change is our next competency, or our first competency. Do you know how to change something? Do you know how to implement successful change in your department? Do you know how to implement successful change in your region or community? Do you know how to effect a successful change with a direct report? Can you change their performance? Change. Nothing more important than an executive leader having in their toolkit the capacity and the tools for, tangible tools for, change. And culturally, can you create a department that is really good at changing? Why is that, Ian? Well, because things they are changing, and they will continue to do so. The acceleration of change is unbelievable, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. External pressures, internal pressures, global pressures change. In this rapidly changing world, are you any good at changing? Well, I just wish things would stay the same. The idea or concept that things are going to stay the same is a fallacy. It's a joke. Things aren't going to stay the same. There's nowhere on God's green earth, and there's nowhere in the vastness of the universe that things stay the same. It doesn't stay the same. The status quo, no. And yet we do everything we can to fight to make things stay the same. Maybe that's flawed. I think it is. Because progress comes through change. Progress and change are indelibly intertwined. There can be no progress without change. I hate it. We talked about this before. I hate it. When Tide comes out with a new detergent, or Cheer, or All, or any of those detergents come out with something new, they don't say this. They don't say, you know what, we were horrible before, so we've got this new. No, they call it new and improved. So if you don't like that word change, then just think in terms of new and improved. At the end of the day, you better be really good at changing. But it can't just be you because you're an executive leader. It has to be the person furthest away from you. And the only way to do that is to have processes and systems, protocols, procedures, and policies that support effective change. And as you'll see in the coming weeks, it's not just about reacting. It's not just, oh my God, we got to change because my alderman called and said we had to change, or my counselor said we had to change, or my commissioner said we had to change, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. But you're changing proactively in anticipation of what will be. Change. The agent of change. But the approaches to change have fundamentally changed. The effective approaches. As I tried to make the case in the last 3 weeks, society has shifted. We're in a user-driven society where it's all about influence. That's how you get people to change. I don't understand. You see, today's agent of change understands, demonstrates, and exerts influence to act as a catalyst for change. They don't bark to act as a catalyst for change. They don't scream to act as a catalyst for change. They don't intimidate to act as a catalyst for change. No, they build trusting relationships so that they can exert influence. You want to change things in your department? People better trust you. Write this down in some white space. If people trust the person who's advocating the change, person or persons, if they trust the process for change, and or if they trust the outcome for change, they're more likely to be open to change. It's all about trust. Title means nothing. Means nothing, attitudinally. People come to work, of course they come to work. But do they do their jobs to the best of their ability? That's the real question. So when you say we're going to go in this direction now, are people like this with attitudinal barriers, or are people excited? So what I have to do over the next 3 weeks is help you to be able to take this arrow and get it going that way. But the only way this arrow will even consider changing is if they trust you, if they trust the process, or they trust the outcome. If they trust you, they'll say this: well, you know what, I'm not excited about this, but I trust you. You haven't let me down before, I'm in. Or they say, you know what, I don't trust you, but you know what, the process has never let me down. I've always found the process to be fair. I've always found the process to be reasonable. Not excited about any of this, but I trust the process, I'm in. Then, or people say, you know what, I don't trust you. I'm not sure about the process, but dang, that outcome could be really, really cool. I'm willing to take the risk. Because ultimately, that's what change is about. This person changing is a little bit of a risk. And in some instances, it's a big risk. So if you want to be an agent of change, you want to be really good at changing things, then you understand, you demonstrate, and you exert influence to get people to change. And how do I build influence? Through trusting relationships. So my computer's really loud today. So how do you build trusting relationships? Because it's not just trusting relationships with you. It's also trusting relationships in your organization. And the challenge for that is there may have been some things that have occurred in the past few years that actually violated trust. Maybe you weren't intentionally trying to do it, but when we freeze wages, right? When we freeze wages, that fractures a little bit of trust. When people don't get a raise, that creates a little bit of angst. It could even be toxic. And then you add in all the other pressures. Well, people know they can trust me as the executive leader. Yeah, but they don't deal with you. They deal with Bob the supervisor or Jane the supervisor. And to them, that frontline person, Bob and Jane, are you. So if Bob and Jane aren't doing what they're supposed to do, then they don't trust you. Isn't that crazy? That's the absolute truth. You're judged on the performance of the leader that's closest to them, not on your performance. The leader that's closest to them is the organization to them. The leader that's closest to them is you, extensively, because they are an extension of you. And if they're acting like a jerk over and over and over and over and over and over again, the frontline person can only assume one of two things. Either one, you don't know what's going on, which is bad, or you're allowing them to act like that, which is bad. That's why, from my perspective, this program can be effective, because you're learning while your mid-level leaders are learning. And if you really want to take this and leverage this program, you'll do everything you can to get intimately involved with those mid-level leaders as they're growing, to ensure that the effect is that they're getting better. Employees get better as soon as leaders get better. change. So over the next 3 weeks, what I'm going to try to do is give you ways to change things, systems, processes. How do you change you? Well, we've already talked about that with that change continuum. How do you implement change in a department? We're going to talk about that today. And then in the coming weeks, how do you initiate change in performance? What's your strategy from taking a poor performer to standard performance and then standard performance to above standard performance? That's what we're going to talk about the next 3 weeks. How do you change things? Oh, and then last, how do you make change in the community? How do you expand your sphere of influence? And that's different than the mid-level leader necessarily, because you're out in the community. You're dealing with council or commission, whatever it is in your area. You're dealing with the Rotary, business owners and the like. You're dealing with the chamber. You're dealing with economic development. You're dealing with all of these people. Why? Because you touch every citizen from cradle to grave. And the fact of the matter is you have one of the larger budgets, relatively speaking, in your community. And you certainly are responsible for the most important part of the 21st century living. It's infrastructure. So, how do you change within your department? Or how do you change an individual's performance, your direct reports? How do you initiate change in your department? And then how do you initiate change in your community or region? Those are the three tools that we're going to give you. But before we do that, turn the page. Now, this little survey you can take on your own. We're not going to do that right now. You just take this little survey on your own. That competency understands, demonstrates, and exerts influence by building trusting relationships to act as a catalyst for change. But then there's indicators of whether you're doing that or not. And when you have some time, you just give yourself a little test. 1, I'm totally not like that. 10, I'm totally like that. And you sit down and ask yourself these questions, but I don't want to take our precious time to do that now. You could do that. But it'll help you focus where you need to pinpoint in on for the next 3 weeks. And a side note, you better be thinking about making your commitment as well. All right, turn the page. Excuse me, I got to have a little bit of water. Okay. So then where does trust come from? See, the basis of this whole thing is trust. But why? To do that, let's look at how people make decisions today. In the past, people used to look to experts and trust experts to give them the information they needed to help them make good decisions or to make the decisions for them. At this time of the year, anyone that lives in a frigid climate is already starting to think, how the hell can I get out of here? Right, Jeff? How can I go to somewhere else? Because it's really cold. I was in Lethbridge, Alberta on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then I flew to Minneapolis yesterday. And it was cold in Lethbridge. It was like minus 11 Fahrenheit. Not minus 11 Celsius, minus 11 Fahrenheit. It was cold. And people were already talking about, people that I was eating in the hotel restaurant and meeting, and people were already talking about, okay, can't wait till I get out of here. I'm going to Florida, I'm going to California, or I'm going to Mexico, or I'm going to Hawaii, or I am going somewhere. And in the past, how would we plan that trip? How would we organize that trip? Well, we would talk to an expert, right? A travel agent. Because we could trust the expertise that they possessed. But then something changed. I'm really low today. Something changed, right? Something changed. You could say it's technology, you could say it was Facebook, you could say it was Twitter, I don't know. But something changed, and all of a sudden, we stopped trusting that expert. And how do we book that trip now? I'll show you. So remember now, used to listen to an expert. Used to listen to an expert. But now how do we book that trip? That's how we book the trip now. If it has 5 smiley faces, you're in. You don't even listen to an expert anymore. But if it has 5 stars or 5 smiley faces or even 4, and if it's a great price, you'll take 3. Hell, it doesn't even need to have 5. If it's a great price, you'll take 3 stars, 3 smiley faces. Why? Because you believe you can trust this more. Trust it more than the expert. Like, really? Ian, I have no idea how this, what does this have to do with us? Almost every institution that your people interface with, they make decisions based on trust. What they believe they can trust. If they believe they can trust it, they're influenced by it. I believe I can trust that Facebook post, so I'll formulate my decisions from it, even though the expert tells me A, B, and C, E, F, and G. I don't believe that because they're a part of an institution. So this idea that I'm getting unfiltered communication from social media, I trust that more than an expert. You walk in a room and tell the employees, here's what's going to happen. But they listen to the 22-year employee who's speaking off of rumor and conjecture. And you're telling them the straight skinny, but they don't trust you. That is an absolute truth. Wouldn't you say, Jeff? So what do I do with that, Ian? You got to take it into consideration. And know that the only way you're going to influence your people is build trust with them. And as I said a moment ago, it can't just be that you personally have built trust, but organizational trust. Because if I want to get that arrow going in the right direction, or in the direction I want it to be, it's going to have to trust me to change. Progress and change are indelibly intertwined. There can be no progress without change. That's true. And the only way to make change happen today is trust. People either will trust you, process, or outcome. Do they trust you? Do they trust the processes that you use for change? And do they trust the outcome that you're advocating? If one of those 3 things isn't in place, you're screwed. If one of those things are in place, the increase of the likelihood of successful change, the likelihood of successful change increases. If 2 of those things are in place, you are well on your way. If they trust you in the process, awesome. They trust you in the outcome, awesome. They trust the process and the outcome, awesome. They're going to be open to change. So then how do we build trust? Oh, Ian, that is trite. That is really, really trite. You're going to talk to me about how to build trust? Yes, I am. Because it's an intentional exercise. Because as I said, the forces of society are working against us. Right? The flow is against us. We're swimming upstream. People just today inherently don't trust titles, don't trust leaders, don't trust experts. And you are a person with a title, you are in a formal executive leadership role, and you are an expert, which means that they just off the bat will not trust you, or at least look at you with a jaundiced eye. So the only way to come against that is some of the things I'm about to talk about. Okay, let's go through it. So 1, where does trust come from? Vocational competency. Why do people think you're any good? Stop and look at all the TV shows today. In almost every TV show, the big leader is an idiot. Most TV shows are not about a big leader. They're usually about a mid-level leader. And whether he's a cop, whether he's a fireman, or whether she's a nurse, or whether, right, an investigator, they're usually the mid-level. There's usually somebody above them. Have you ever noticed that, Jeff? And the somebody above them is never as smart as the people in the middle. Even family shows. Look at even the family shows. The leader of the family is always an idiot. I don't remember the last time there was a show where the parents were smarter than the kids. Do you remember one? I don't remember one. It's always the adult, especially men, are portrayed as buffoons. Right? Buffoons. Yeah. I don't even want to mention him now. Yeah. So, how do people know that you're vocationally competent? Yeah, but Ian, in the past you've talked about being leadership competent. Correct. But when you get to a position of executive leadership, you can't know it all. There will be people that will be more vocationally competent than you are. But to whatever degree possible, you want to know something about what they do. Came up on the public works side, then you got to know something about those engineers. Came up on the engineering side, then you got to go out and get dirty with some of those guys and gals so that they see that you bring something to the party. They're not enamored with your title anymore. They're not enamored with the fact that you rose to that level of leadership. For all they know, you kissed somebody's butt to get there. So in some white space free of charge, write this: why will people follow me? What is it that I bring to the party that would make them say, I'll give you permission to lead me? Well, Ian, no, it doesn't work like that. I have a title. And they're going to follow me if they want a job. I'm not talking about the formal hierarchy. I'm talking about the attitudinal hierarchy. Do people trust you to lead them? Write down really quick for me, what is it you bring that makes their situation better? Your knowledge, your years of experience, your ability to formulate a new idea, your ability to work with others, your ability to go get resources from the city manager and the council or whatever your organizational structure is of the governmental entity in which you work. What is it? You a great listener? You're good at clearing the brush and solving problems. You a good facilitator? What is it? What is it that you're awesome at that would make somebody say, I want to follow her. I want to follow him. Now, if you're drawing a blank right now, that's okay. It's fine. But you better have something. I call it a differentiating factor. What is your differentiating factor? What sets you apart? It's like those life's 5 most urgent questions. What will be your greatest contribution to your organization? And why should this be proactive? Because when it's intentional and proactive, it's a heck of a lot more likely to occur. So there's no way that you're going to be vocationally competent in every one of the job descriptions or every one of the job codes within your department. There are going to be people that know more than you about something. And so you've got to ask yourself, what am I bringing? What's my vocational competency? Well, it better be leadership. And within that, what specifically? When I see somebody and I say to them, wow, they're really good at blank, I have a tendency to trust them a little bit more. Even if the thing they're really good at supports the work and isn't directly involved in the work. In other words, that guy's a really good communicator, and he seems to be very forthright and honest. He doesn't know anything about how to operate a fleet yard, but man, I can trust what he says. Or doesn't have any understanding of how the process of these traffic lights work, anything like that. However, he's really, really good and has built a strong relationship with the city manager. We always get what we need. Or man, this guy doesn't know anything about water and wastewater, not a lick, but wow, he's incredible about getting other departments to work with us and support what we're doing. Or he's a great problem solver, she's a great problem solver. It doesn't matter what it is, but something. All right, look at this next one. You want to build trust? Then there's got to be open communication. Now, many of you work off of an open door policy communication style. And speaking very openly, that's a joke. Open door policy communication style is a joke. I'm not trying to be offensive or mean, and you can send me an email later and tell me I'm a jerk. But think about it. Sitting in your office waiting for somebody to walk in the open door is not proactive. It's reactive. And reactive is never good when it comes to running a department. Proactive means that I'm out and about. I have open communication. Now, not in this 3 weeks, but in the coming 3 weeks, I'm going to give you a system for the gathering of thoughts, ideas, and concerns, the prioritizing of those thoughts and ideas, and then a way to pick the best and implement them through the work of your employees. Because that's really open communication. Now, some of you are really good at pushing information out, but how good are you at bringing information in? open communication. If you want to build trust, then you have processes and systems for the gathering of thoughts, ideas, and concerns. And it's robust, and I'll give you a robust approach. Not today, but I will give you one. But before we get into all that, a basic principle. You have 4 kinds of communicators that you deal with. Like when you're dealing with mayor and council, or reeve and council if you're in parts of Canada, or regional commissioners, and council chair, whatever your structure is. Or maybe when you're dealing with your direct reports, or when you're dealing with citizens at a public meeting. 4 kinds of communication styles that you're going to bump up against. First, there's the fact-based communicator. That's the person that communicates in not just in numbers, but linearly, sequentially. They want it laid out step to step to step to step. They're the fact-based communicator. Some of you are fact-based communicators. Then there's the emotional-based communicator. That's the individual that however they're feeling at that moment is what you're going to get. Now, stop and think about this. The fact-based communicator, the emotion-based communicator. So the fact-based communicator listens to this broadcast, and you ask them, how did it go? And they say, Ian had 7 points on blank, and this was the sequence of those points. It was this, 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 and this. And you ask the emotion-based communicator, how was the broadcast? Oh, it had really good energy. Right? It had really good energy. Well, have you ever seen those 2 communicators sit in a room and communicate with each other? Is that a potential for a train wreck? Yes, it is. Emotion-based communicator. Then there's the values-based communicator. Now look, we all have a different set of values. We all have a different set of values, the way we run our lives. Some of you know I coach soccer, right? And we've got this really unique soccer program that we've just initiated, and it's really having great success. And it's for kids, primarily girls, and it's using soccer to grow them as human beings and teaching them that they're strong and capable and can do anything, and using soccer as the vehicle to do that. Well, I was coaching indoor soccer last winter, and I set my phone on the rail there because it's a turf field within a hockey rink, and there's the boards. And I set my phone on one of the boards, coached, walked out, went to pizza, realized I didn't have my phone. So I thought, oh, I don't have my phone. So I ran back, walked in, and my phone was gone. Talked to the staff, talked to the owner, talked to everybody who was now on the new people that were on the field, phone gone. And how many of you know you'd rather lose your wallet than lose your phone? So I thought to myself, or maybe it was my daughter, my little one, that reminded me, hey, Dad, you got that find your phone on your phone. Find my phone. Awesome. So I went home, computer, find my phone. Whoa, there's my phone. Ha ha ha. My phone is on Presidential Street. Now in the area that I live, Presidential Street is a little bit of a challenged area. High crime rate, low income, challenged area. I said, some kid who was there practicing grabbed my phone, took it to his house. So with this find your phone thing, you can type in and it sends it. You can shut the phone down, first of all, so they can't use it. And then it sends a message that goes across the screen. And basically my message was, hey dude, no worries, just give me my phone back. You know, you must have just mistakenly grabbed it. You thought it was yours, no problems. Cheery, cheery, lovey, lovey, give me my phone back. 2 hours later, no phone, no response. So cheery, cheery, lovey, lovey turned into, hey, look, man, you better give me my phone. Because I know where you live, I know where your house is, I want my phone. No response. So what do? I called the sheriff. I called the sheriff. I know the sheriff, so I called the sheriff. I said, hey, man, here's the drill. Somebody got my phone. I explained the situation, so on and so forth. And the sheriff's office was like, well, what do you want us to do? I said, I want you to get my phone. Go get my phone. And they said, well, has it been stolen? I said, it's not in my possession and somebody else has it. I want my phone. And they said, well, do you want us to go now? I said, listen to me. And listen very closely. You can either go now and get my phone, or you're going to come later after I've gotten my phone. But either way, I'm getting my phone. Because now it's about midnight, and I'm not a happy camper. Oh, no, don't do that, Mr. Hill. Meet us at the strip mall down the way. We'll talk with you, and then we'll go over there and get your phone. So that all unwinds. It's a long story, but follow me. So this guy comes back, deputy sheriff comes back. He's like, has this quizzical look on his face, but he has my phone. And I said, well, what's going on? He said, you're never going to believe this. I said, what's that? He said, I knocked on the door, and he said, I knew it was the right house because there was a soccer ball sticker on the car that said indoor soccer, so they were probably there. Knocked on the door, and he said an older gentleman answered the door. And I explained why I was there, and that I was there to get a phone. And he said apologetically, oh, I have the phone. I didn't know that somebody wanted it back. And the sheriff said, he asked, what were you planning on doing with it? And he said, I was going to give it to my grandson. Going to give it to your grandson? Yeah. I could never afford a phone like this. Values. And I thought about that all the way on the drive home. And I thought, you know what? I bet this guy isn't a bad guy. But in his set of values, found meant good fortune. Found meant, hey, life has smiled on me. Found meant, look, fate, I get something, my good fortune. And in my worldview, in my value system, found means, hey, whose is this? Let me get it to the person who lost it. Ah, he was a bad person. He's like a 68-year-old man. Well, they can be bad people. I'm sure from what the deputy said, he was incredibly apologetic. Just a different value system. If I don't understand where someone's coming from value-wise, I'm going to have a tough time communicating with them. And then finally, belief. The belief-based communicator. So here's the drill on the belief-based communicator. The belief-based communicator, you've told them all the facts. You've given them all the anecdotes. You've given the empirical evidence. And then they look at you and do this. That's great, but now let me tell you what I believe. You know people like that. You might even be like that. What's my point? My point is that every time you get in front of a public audience, in a public meeting, you got all 4 communication styles in play. Every time you get up and communicate to your staff, you have all 4 communication styles in play. You better use a little bit of each. Oh, that's not possible. Okay, look at a truck commercial. All you got to do is look at a truck commercial, and you'll see all 4 communication styles in play. You'll see the numbers on the side and at the bottom. Towing power and horsepower and kilometers per liter or miles per gallon or whatever it is wherever you live. That's the fact-based communicating. The emotion-based communicating, the music, the flag blowing in the wind, the dog jumping up, the half-naked girl squirming on the hood of the truck like it has nothing to do with the truck. The values-based communicator, that's the imagery of the cowboy, the imagery of the down home and wholesome. The belief-based, all of that combined. In 30 seconds, they use all 4 of those communication styles. As an executive leader, you've got to be a great communicator. You have to be open in your communication. Well, part of that is, will you bend your style to meet somebody else's? Because in the past, followers in their mind said, I have to bend to the leader. Those days are gone, man. There are no followers bending to leaders without deep trust. So bend your style to your direct report style, you're going to be better off. Practicing that, let me give you an intangible. I want you to start listening for the next 5 days between now and next week. Some of you have Thanksgiving next week. Those of you in Canada do not. I want you to take a few days and listen to people like they're going to die at midnight. What? I want you to listen to them. You see, listening is a lost art, but there is nothing more powerful than a person feeling understood. When I walk away from a conversation with you saying, wow, that guy really understands me. Trust. Wow, she really understands me. Trust. When people feel understood, they're more likely to trust. If they're more likely to trust, they're more likely to change. or at least take a risk with you when you say, come on along with me. Trust me on this one, just come along with me. Well, if they feel like you understand them, they're more likely to. I don't know how many of you have sent me notes saying, Ian, you understand us. Yeah. Now, whether I do or not, I've at least given you some sense that I do. And so you trust this thing. And you're willing to journey in it with me. And you're open to change. So when I say listen to people like they're dying at midnight, what I mean is set aside the phone, set aside the email, set aside the next meeting, and give somebody your full attention, your full eyes, your full ears, your full heart, your full intuition. Give them everything you got. Why? Because number one, they're a human being and they deserve it. And number two, when you listen to that level, people feel more understood. And sorry, I forgot to say this. And by the way, where I want you to practice is at home. First. I want you to practice this exercise at home first. Then I'm going to give you a tangible exercise. So that's intangible. A tangible open communication exercise. I want you to send out a survey to all of your direct reports. And I'm going to give you, later today, I'm going to give your direct reports this exact same exercise. I want you to send out a survey, very simple. Now you can send it out via Google Apps, you could send it out via SurveyMonkey, you could send it out on a Word doc, but whatever you do, don't send it out and say reply to all. Don't do that. Because you want it to go out anonymous. Now this survey that I want to have you send out has 3 questions. Question number 1, what am I doing right? Question number 2, what am I doing wrong? Or what's the one thing you'd have me to change? Suggestions for my improvement. Question number 3, if you could send me back to school, what class would you make me take? 3 questions. Now, why would I ask you to send out that survey? To build trust. To build trust. You're the big boss. You're the executive leader. Send out the survey. Let people give you input on your performance. Number 1, they're going to respect you more for even doing the exercise. Number 2, as they see you taking the feedback that you've been given and doing something with it, they're going to admire you a little bit more. They're going to trust you a little bit more. And they might actually say this, I'll be open to that person speaking into my life because they're doing something I'd never do. Now, the first few times you might get a bunch of junk. You know what I mean? It's like the first time you put out a suggestion box and people put gum wrappers in it. But over a period of time, if you do this consistently, I used to do it every 90 days. Every 90 days, I sent out a survey where people could give me their feedback. And that was my direct reports. And then the whole organization, once a year, got to give feedback on my performance. Transparent leadership is what we long for. It's a user-driven society, and people want to have a say in what goes on in their existence. They'll revel in the opportunity to tell you what to do and what you need to change, and you just roll with it. Later, in the coming days, I'll tell you what you can glean from that survey and how you could use it for maximum impact and effect. But for now, do the survey. Now, with the holiday coming up, you might want to just send it out on Monday and then don't expect it back till the following week. But send out that survey. And in the same sense, make sure that your direct reports, because I'm giving you some insight later today, I'm going to ask them to do the same thing. Get your direct reports to do the survey. And we're doing a whole 365 of how we're doing as a department. I call them courageous conversations. Quality conversations lead to quality relationships. Quality relationships build trust and lead to quality outcomes. It's a nice little cycle. Quality conversations lead to quality relationships and trust. Quality relationships based on trust lead to quality outcomes. This is a proactive exercise to kickstart that cycle. Kickstart the cycle. Open communication. Intangible, listen like people are going to die at midnight. If you were leaving the planet on midnight, I'd give you every ounce of energy I have to listen to your every word. Tangible, that's intangible. Tangible, send out that survey on a regular basis. Clarity of outcomes. We trust when the outcome is clear. I'll talk about that more in a moment. We trust people that have a high emotional IQ. Like, you don't mind working for a jerk as long as they're a jerk all the time. As long as they're consistently a jerk every day to everyone, at least you know what you're dealing with. High emotional IQ, what's that really about? It's about disengaging the clutch. Can you disengage the clutch? When your elevator starts to rise, can you disengage the clutch of your mouth and think to yourself, what would be the most effective thing for me to say or do right now that would further my goals and objectives? And if it's contrary to what you feel like doing, do the former, not the latter. That's a high emotional IQ in its essence. And then relatability, likability, and loving what you do. We don't trust people that are curmudgeons. We don't trust people that are angry about their work or hate doing what they do. We don't trust those people. We distance ourselves from those people. Jennifer Aniston is not the best actress in the history of mankind, but she has high likability. She's likable. Now, I'm not saying you got to kiss everybody's butt, but you do have to be civil, and you do have to be kind, and you do have to acknowledge people's humanity. You got to be likable. Don't have to be everybody's buddy and pal, but you do have to be likable. And you got to love what you do. Too many of us have quit and stayed, and then we wonder why people don't want to jump on board when we start advocating change. Turn the page. So those things are the bedrock. They're the bedrock of building a trusting relationship and thereby building trusting culture. Now, of course, we're going to unpack that more over the next 3 weeks. Absolutely. But without trust, no change is going to happen in today's day and age. And the more trust you can build with people of influence, the more you're going to get things done. And when I say people of influence, I don't just mean people of influence out in the community. I mean people of influence within the department. You have some 30-year employees that wield a significant amount of influence. Do you have a trusting relationship with them? And some of them have no title whatsoever, and yet they're running that shop. So if it's me, and we'll talk about this in the coming days, I make a list of those people of influence that I need on board to get done what I need to get done. And I go work proactively to build trusting relationships with them. All right, I want to take you, in the time, we have about 10 minutes left. I want to take you at a high level through a process for implementing change within your department. Now, I'm going to post a video. I'm going to post a video that will unpack this to a greater degree. So for now, I'm just going to tantalize you a little bit with some of the key points. And then you can watch that video at your leisure. I think you have a moral obligation to have a system for implementing change. Yeah, I used it, the word moral. You have a moral obligation. How many of you ever cleaned up a crappy change? How many of you are still dealing with the residue of a change that occurred years before you even took the position you have now? How many of you have experienced a crappy change and dealt with the stress of that and taken it home? I think you have a moral obligation, a moral obligation to have a process for the implementation of change. The reality is you're going to be implementing change all the time. And I think you need to have a, in case of change, break glass mentality, that you have a system there. I'm going to share with you now at a high level, and then later via video in the portal, and I'll let you know when it's there, a system for changing that I have found to be very, very effective. It's based on this trust thing, and it's linear in the sense that it's very methodical. It happens the same way every single time. Why? So that people trust the process. They may not like what we're changing or the thing that we have to change or the destination, but they know how the process works, so they have some level of comfort because they know what to expect. Let's look at it. Vision drives change. All change is driven by vision. People will buy in if they know what the destination is, or they're more likely to. And I always like to say this, they got to know what it looks like, smells like, feels like, tastes like. If they know what it looks like, smells like, feels like, tastes like when we're done with all this nonsense, then they're more likely to change. If you wanted to build a boat, would you go around telling people, hey, I need some wood, I need some of your time and sweat, I need some nails, I need some money? Or would you say this, see that beautiful island over there? If we can get to that beautiful island over there, it'll be amazing, the experience that we have. And then you'd show them pictures of the beautiful island. And then of course their response is, well, how do we get to the beautiful island? Well, that's the problem, I ain't got a boat. Well, what would it take to build a boat? Someone will yell. I don't know, anybody got any wood? I got some wood. We'll probably need a little money. I got some money. We probably need some nails. I got some nails. So do you go around asking people for money, wood, and nails, or do you just tell them about the destination? I would suggest tell them about the destination. And they'll be more willing to get on board with some of their time, talent, and treasure. Does that make sense, Jeff? But we spend all our time trying to get some wood, some nails, and some money. But never talking to people about the vision of the change, the outcome, and its impact. We in this sector do a crappy job of talking about impact. We do a great job of talking about outcomes. The sheriff does an incredible job of talking about impact. The fire chief talks about impact, and that's why they don't have budget challenges to some degree. Okay, so vision drives change. Then my thing is I want to change team. I'm not going to initiate change by myself because I know I don't have a connection with everybody. So I'm going to initiate major changes and even minor ones with the change team. Now, what does the change team do for me? The change team gives me breadth and depth. The change team gives me credibility where I don't have it. The change team gives me ears to the rail. Because when I walk in, everybody does this. It's great, boss. Everything's fine. But I know everything's not fine. So the change team, frontline and mid-level leaders that are on my team, formal or informal, to help me initiate the change. The change team. Now, the funny thing about the change team is their role isn't to decide or give me advice on whether we should change. We're working off the premise that the change has already been set. We are changing. So we're changing. Okay, we're changing. So if we're changing, then what? Well, I need a team to help me implement it, facilitate its implementation. So their role is to do just that. Help me build a plan for the implementation and help me implement. And I noticed that we're running out of time because I went a little long earlier and I apologize. But watch that video because one of the points that I make is this. We've got to translate the change from he's making us change or she's making us change to it's our change. They may not be able to dictate what the change is, but to whatever degree possible, we want to give them a say, give our people a say in the how. They may not be able to dictate the why or the what, but let them dictate the how. Why? Because they have operational insight and vocational expertise. They have operational insight, vocational expertise, and it creates a sense of self-determination. And why do people have attitudinal pushback a lot of times on change? Because they didn't have a say in it. And they haven't, it's being rammed down their throat. So to lessen that feeling, we can say, yeah, I know you're not too excited about the change, but give me some insight in how we should do it. To whatever degree possible, let people have a say in the how. Because maybe they don't have a say in the why or the what. Quickly, the reactions to change. Anytime you're working with any group, they're going to react to change. And I want to go through what I've found to be the 5 reactions to change. First, there is the early riser. That's the individual that just loves change. My wife changes her hair color literally every 90 days. Gina, you saw her. Every 90 days she changes her hair color. She just loves change. She's just kind of that person. She'll change things just to change them. She gets bored real fast. And she just wants change. Now, luckily, she hasn't kicked my butt to the curb. Right? She should have. She hasn't changed me yet. Or if she has, I haven't gotten the memo. Right? The early riser just likes change. They're going to be down for your change. Then there's the early adapter. Now, they're okay with change. Now, watch. They're good with change, but give me an explanation. Why are we changing again? What's the point? As long as you can give them a point, give them an explanation, they're good with change. Then there's the crowd. You can also write next to them sheeple. Sheep people. Now, before you think that's disparaging, you've been a sheeple. I've been a sheeple. That's when we go like this. Well, it doesn't matter to me. Whatever. I got other things to worry about. If we're going to do that, we'll do that. I don't care. Now, if the polarity amongst the group is negative, they'll pull negative. If the polarity amongst the group is positive, they'll pull positive. sheeple, the crowd. Then there is the legitimizer. Now the legitimizer, that's the individual that asks real questions and wants real answers. They come off being a resistor. You think they're resistant. They're not resistant. They care deep. They're the one that you think is challenging you in meetings. But they just want to know what's going on. They're the person that asked the question after we've all said, any more questions? And we're all thinking in our minds, please nobody ask a question. And then they ask a question. They get their legitimacy because they say and do what the crowd wishes it could say or do. And then finally, the resistor. The resistor. This is the individual that's just against. Now, before you blame them and attack them, you've been resistant. Maybe you were going through a tough time in your personal life, and then there was change in the workplace, and you were resistant to it because that was the only stability you had. So if I'm forming a change team, I need to look at this. If I'm implementing change, I need to look at this. Who should I put on my change team? Well, you better put a legitimizer on there to make the change team legitimate, not just a bunch of people that kiss your butt. So that the crowd looks and says, oh, that's a legitimate group. I wouldn't put any resistors on there. Legitimizer will keep you honest. Now, in interest of time, so vision drives change. You're going to form a change team. You're going to take into consideration these reactions to change. And then you're going to create a strategy for change, and you're going to implement the change. And the strategy for change is going to involve a task list and a timeline. Created by you? No, not created by you. Created by the change team. Hey, change team, if we have to implement this change, what would you recommend the action steps are? And what would you recommend the timelines that correspond to those action steps are? And in that video I'll post, I'll tell you how to go about that. What does that do immediately? It makes it their change, not yours anymore. And then, this is a little bit of a nuance, you're going to send that task list and timeline, that plan, you're going to send that out to all of the stakeholders impacted. Even if you just give them 24 hours to respond, at least they had some input. Because what you're trying to do is take this change that either you came up with or you were forced to implement, and you want to make the how theirs. As opposed to, oh, we got to do this thing the boss said. Oh yeah, we got to do this thing the boss said, but at least the boss has given us some sense of self-determination and allowing us to come up with how we're going to implement it. Now, nowhere along this continuum are we debating the change. That's already been decided by either me or somebody above me. We're changing. But what you can determine is the how. And then we'll talk about the implementation of that change and some nuances there and what to do when it's not going well. And then how to analyze whether the change was effective or not. That's the beauty of having 3 weeks. What do you mean? Well, you can unpack this to a greater degree. Being an agent of change cannot be explained in 1 hour. I've got to give you tools to be able to implement change with an individual for their performance. You'll see a video on that. I'll let you know when it's up. How to implement change within your organization. I just gave you a high-level overview of that. How to implement change out in your community. Marshaling the human capital of stakeholders to get them in alignment with the public works agenda. Those 3 things, 1, 2, 3. And I got 3 weeks to do it, and we got a holiday in the middle for those of you in the States. But underneath all of that, trust. None of that. An employee will not change their performance unless they trust you, the process, or the outcome, or one of the 3. Nobody is going to implement change effectively within your department unless they trust you, the outcome, or the process, or the outcome, or one of the 3. And certainly you're not going to implement change in a community if those things aren't in play. So at the end of the day, what I want you to walk away from this 1 hour together is this. If I want to be an agent of change, then I understand, I demonstrate, and I exert influence through trusting relationships to act as a catalyst for change. The effective public works leader knows how to change things if they're going to be effective in the 21st century. I'll be in the chat box for a little while. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry we're a minute or 2 late. Talk to you later, everybody.